That takes precedent. So, but yeah, just to continue, I thought it would be interesting if it's just cool. It's just something really passing the time, driving to the mountains, meeting people, if you will, finding out that a lot of my weird interests, particularly in music, apparently aren't that weird. It's really kind of funny because I was kind of the solo freak show in high school. And I had musical interests that were all over the place, very inconsistent. And so I just doing this, and it's funny because you meet other people who are like, oh my goodness, I thought I was the only one that knew that band, King's X. I never knew how great and large their following was because it was just myself, a guy I knew in State College named Bryn Williams, and a couple of random other people who were into King's X. And then I do this and I find out there are King's X people all over the place. And that kind of makes me happy because King's X is greatness. Bandmate kind of goes without saying. If you have a pulse, you're into the Bandmate. But yeah, I've learned there are so many things that I thought was just me that is really everywhere. And that's another thing where I'll tell you that the internet kind of pulls us apart, but you have things like that with the musical interest, and it really does draw us closer. Now, not as close as that Prince guy. Yeah, that's bothersome. Here's the thing. When we're talking about any sort of famous celebrity, well-to-do criminal, how are you royalty? How are you famous? How are you someone who has all the money, but then you get involved in such deviance? And yes, we're human. We're human, all right? Some of us do some really nasty things. Do you remember Plaxico Burress? And this was after the Super Bowl win with the Giants. He was in a club and apparently had a handgun in his sweatpants. And it went off, and I think he shot himself. I know it went off, but I think he shot himself. And my wife was saying, don't they know that they can't do this? No, they don't. They're athletes. They don't really have a lot of common sense socially. That's why athletes are known saying kind of stupid things in public. Because, yeah, their life isn't in the public. Their life is on the field, on the ice, on the court. So, if you are at that level where you're super athletic, super successful, super rich, shouldn't at least it be common sense to hire a handler? Someone who takes care of what you do and who you are. Cal Ripken did that. We'll tell that story later. But it's like if you were at that level, there are certain things you shouldn't need to do because you should be paying somebody to advise you on what you should be doing, just like you do with your money. If you have all the money, you're not just sitting in a safe in the backyard. You are hiring someone to handle that so you can be responsible, or so you can be irresponsible but managed. So, like I said, a lot of this stuff with the Epstein stuff, it really doesn't interest me per se, but the thought process of someone who has all the status, all the money, and then does these things. Why? Why? Now, if you watch enough anime, the answer is they were bored. If you watch anime, you will know the biggest evil in life is boredom. Light Yagami, bored. What was it? Just, and Light should have won. If you do not know what I'm talking about, I am speaking on Death Note. Light should have won. And yes, had he won, I probably wouldn't be here. But Light should have won. But I don't know. I mean, I know Shannon Sharp had his little podcast. He had Cat Williams on. Has it been a year? It's been a little more than a year since. Yeah, it was 24 when Cat Williams started talking about, I think debauchery is a proper word to use. And Shannon Sharp was stunned. Yeah, I think that's part of it. And I'm speaking to my wife about this because she was like, oh yeah, everybody knows. No, Shannon Sharp is an athlete. They don't live in that world. They may have celebrity friends, but they don't live in this celebrity world. So a lot of that stuff would be shocking to an athlete. Except for Kobe Bryant. Or Magic Johnson. Or Wilt Chamberlain. I'm sorry, that was wrong, but it was funny. But it's... How do you get involved in these things? Is that something that you get involved in once you reach a certain status? If you believe folks like Cat Williams, they will tell you that, you go in a meeting with the next Ludacris, and they say you shave your head and you do this, that, and the other, and you'll become famous. Is that real? Is that true? I don't know. The little bit of time I spent trying to be a rock and roll star, I guess I wasn't good enough for anyone to really give me any attention. So I never saw this. But I did have, distant conversations. Distant meaning I spoke to them, I've met them, but they probably wouldn't recognize me from a grain of sand. Folks like Jimmy Haha. And he made it, and I didn't hear tell of that in his life. So where does this even come from? Like, it's just weird. It's weird. But ultimately, as I said, the names really don't matter. I think a lot of us are really into it. Look at Harry Houdini, always see. Yeah, and I get that, right? Boredom, chasing the high, looking for the thrill. Why did you climb the mountain? Because it was there. But I said yesterday, I am a pretty scared person. I do operate a little bit out of fear. And I don't think that's unhealthy within reason. Captain Tozan from the Soul Society said that if you don't have fear, you can't fight. That's a Bleach reference. Kaname Tozan. But it's like, like I said, the names don't matter as much. I think we really kind of take more interest in this because we are waiting for big names to drop. And I think that's another thing with this Epstein thing. I think a lot of us who are interested in this are waiting for big names to drop so we can say that big names dropped and then move on to the next thing in life. I don't think there is any, it's theater to me. And that's why I say the names don't really matter. Whoever is involved, bury them under the jail. If you believe in the death penalty, bury them under the jail. We don't do these things. But does it make sense what I'm saying? It's like, yes, I really hope all of the people who do these things get stopped. But I don't care to have their names and their faces blasted like it's another event. It's not an event. This whole situation, if it is true, and I say if it is true, I mean as we are absorbing, as we are being informed by the media, if all that is true, then that whole situation is absolutely disgusting. If all that is true, then all the people involved in said situation are absolutely disgusting. And this is parallel to my thought process during the diddification of our news media here. Because yeah, our news media was diddified. Everything was about diddy, 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 diddy. And it's like, I don't care. But all of these people came out of the woodwork and said, yeah, I knew that. I knew Diddy was doing that. I knew that. Well, then you're guilty too. You can't say, yeah, I knew that, and then, you know, talk trash when what you knew, and especially when you knew what you knew, and then what you can't do that. You're just as guilty. So even 50 Cent, and look, 50 Cent is the greatest. If there was ever a troll hall of fame, 50 Cent should be at the door, a gold life-size statue for trolling. But 50 Cent said that he knew this. So if you knew it, how can you sit back? They do this stuff. I know. It's BS news media to me because, like I said, I don't so much care about the people. I care about the crimes being committed and that the proper and appropriate punishment is served. That's what I care about. If by chance it's the Prince of New, who cares? Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter who it is. It's The Rock. It doesn't matter what your name is. I do a lot of these pro wrestling references. I have no life. But it's kind of reality TV-ish. And we have the, you know, like I said, Prince Andrew. And the UK, he's now arrested over this Epstein thing. Those of us who are following this are interested in seeing what other names drop. But there, I know, are people who have known this whole time what's going on. So why are they not as guilty? Why? And I know that someone made the comment that if they truly exposed everything in the Epstein files, that pretty much our entire government and entertainment industry would be just shattered. Okay. I don't care. If you are doing these things, you gotta go. We can't have you out in society. That's not what you do. That's not right. That's not what's acceptable. So, how did I get off on that tangent? Oh, it started with Prince Andrew. You're royalty, dude. Seek such solutions because that's important. I agree with that also. Sister Wives, 21 and Counting, those two shows specifically. So that's the Brown family, Cody Brown and all that. And the Duggar family. Now these are reality TV shows, they say. Not scripted, just everyday slice of life things. Kind of like this, except interesting. And I thought that it was kind of a sickness in watching and following this, because sadly the 6 has been going on. I know. And it's like in all of our popular society, we talk about evolving. Why haven't we evolved past this? And that takes me, like I said, the 21 and Counting, the Sister Wives and all that. When you're watching these shows, yes, I do. Inquiring minds want to know, and yes, the Inquirer, the National Enquirer, all the rags, man, just Cher, abducted by aliens. That's why she looks that way. And I'm like, I just thought she was looking that way. But am I the only person that saw these shows that said, why are we entertaining ourselves with the demise of other people? Because to me, that's what it was. Yes, the Weekly World News. Yes, the Weekly World News. The Weekly World News was such a tabloid, borderline, just lie rag that, you couldn't take it seriously. And then it was like somewhere in the mid-90s, they started getting stuff right. People were like stunned. But why do we watch this stuff? Like, I'm a consumer of professional wrestling. And when professional wrestling is good, there is drama. There are storylines outside of the ring and in the ring. Soap operas for men, it's been called. Professional wrestling. Love it. Because it's fake. I don't want this in my real life, you know what I mean? This feels yeah, I understand. Good morning, how are we? I understand that there are some of us out there that will watch Joe Screw Up on TV, and the response that we have will be, well, it's not me. I understand that. I just don't understand that. I watch Joe Screw Up and I'm like, why? How? Don't. You know, it's almost like haterism, where you have people that get all sorts of evil and antagonistic towards people because they're successful. True story. I worked for Heidler Roofing in York, Pennsylvania for a while. Great company, great ownership. I'll say it out loud. Ron Wenger, I cannot stand you. Heidler Roofing. I had a helper. I was out doing repairs, and I had a helper, and we were in, I guess, what you would call a more well-to-do part of York City, and we were going to do a repair, and he looks at the house, and he says, man, that house is fat. He said, I would rob that dude. And I'm like, what? Like, he said that. I would rob. No. When you see success like that, you have a conversation. You find out what they are doing, what they have done, what they plan on doing to get them there and to keep themselves there. And then you determine if that is the proper path for you, because you might be able to learn something. Or if you realize they're doing something really nasty, then you realize that's not the path for you. How did you get rich? Yes! How? Because you know what? I'm not rich. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. I sort of kind of made it on a very, very low level, but I never made it to the majors. But everywhere I went, and all ball players do this. It's starting pretty much in middle school. You get around other good ball players, or you get around better ball players, you get in their ear, you get in their brain, you start talking to them. How did you get there? How did you get this good? Because I not only want to be as good as you, but I want to be better than you. But I'm not trying to destroy you. I'm not trying to hurt you or rob you. No, I just want to be better. That's all. So, yeah, that haterism, that's kind of the opposite similarity to, us watching the destructive drama and calling that entertainment. Even things like The Bachelor. I never watched The Bachelor. I've never watched a single episode of The Bachelor nor The Bachelorette. But the concept of the show, to me, is horrible. Basically, who out of the concubine do you want? And what will they do? Dare I say, how low will they stoop to be the chosen human? That's not entertainment. That's not even a real courtship. And once again, I don't follow The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, but how many of those relationships that I guess are developed on that show turn out being good relationships? Serious question. Because the whole premise of it doesn't bode for a good relationship. I mean, it can be kind of soul-crushing, I think, especially if you lose, especially if you're one of the final 2 or 3 and you don't get, what is it, a rose? It's just, no. I don't like that stuff. What was it? They have a lot of them. They have, they used to have like a Mean Girls Club, and my oldest daughter used to watch that mess. And I'm like, why are we watching the worst behavior in all of... Yeah, the worst behavior in the world, and we're calling that entertainment. I can't. Now, if that's what you're into, I mean, you have the right to do that. I know, it's television programming. And I'm the guy that grew up with the Thursday night NBC lineups, you know, a little more wholesome. It's like the people that grew up with Leave It to Beaver when I was a kid, you know, it's like, that's not good entertainment. That's too, yeah. So we'll talk about Cosby one of these days. We will talk about Bill Cosby one of these days. And I will say, because this kind of relates to Epstein. Bill Cosby, Epstein, right? So, Leave It to Beaver was a good show. Still the Beaver they were reaching. That was garbage. Specific to Bill Cosby, and I'll be as blunt and plain-spoken as I can be about this. The 60s, the 70s, the early 80s. You are telling me that a black man was doing the things that Bill Cosby was accused of doing, and nobody said anything? I have a hard time buying that. And we were talking yesterday about like racial things, right? But there is a racial reality in our society. And I have a hard time believing that in the 60s, 70s, and or 80s, Bill Cosby was doing these things and didn't get locked up for it. I have a hard time believing that. It's the same thing with the Michael Jackson thing, where you have 2 people who happen to live in the same neighborhood, who happen to have the same attorney, who make the same accusation, and it ends up getting squashed because no. And yeah, right, it doesn't make societal sense. Look, good and bad, we know the world we live in. That doesn't make sense. So, and that doesn't even mean that it doesn't mean I'm right. I don't know. But Michael Jackson didn't get any of this backlash until he started speaking. And once again, this is how I'm saying it kind of relates to Epstein. If you recall, when Bill Cosby, we made mention about this about gangster rap, where gangster rap, it is theorized, and I believe there's a level of truth to it, that gangster rap was pumped into minority communities basically to create a prison society. Paraphrasing, but that kind of thing. And so you have folks, you know, Michael Jackson speaking out against the industry. Oh, and there's apparently a story. Michael Jackson whooped Tupac's behind at one point in time, like beat him up. Now, Michael Jackson's hood. Dude was hood. He was just Michael Jackson. So, yeah. And I'm happy about that, because anyone that's into the gangster rap scene, yeah, Tupac Shakur is a snitch. He's a wuss. Don't care what yeah. So all that stuff that he was spouting in his songs, dude's a snitch. Start with that. So there's your legend. And I'll stick with that. Tupac is not on my list of anyone even, no, just no. Sorry. Sorry. I mentioned this, there's certain things in the world that I grew up in that did not exist. And that type of personality didn't exist where I grew up. Either that, or, and I may have mentioned this before, I've actually thanked my parents before for shielding me from some of the craziness out there, because yeah, that stuff wasn't in my world. But Bill Cosby started catching a bunch of grief when he started going on tour speaking about bettering, is that a word? But making better the black family. Specifically the black family. When he started wait, Jada Pinkett's from Baltimore. Okay, anyway, but when Bill Cosby started speaking on that, then that's when all of a sudden this stuff came out of the woodwork. It just doesn't make sense that they wait until this is a broken old man to do this. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't mean it's not true. Doesn't make sense. But back to the original premise of all this, Prince Andrew. When it all comes down to it, I don't care what the name is. If you are doing these types of things, you got to go. And that's the thing that makes it more suspicious is, do you think the only people on the Epstein lists are celebrities and high-level people? No one should be above the law. I don't know about you all out there. Hey, I've had my time when I was an idiot. And they had to say, all right, you need to sit over here for a weekend or two. Yeah, you're being an idiot. Yeah, no one. Nobody. And it doesn't matter what your name is. I wish I had the button bar like on real radio shows, like I had The Rock. It doesn't matter what your name is. That's a horrible impersonation. But I'm always glad when we talk about reality shows and watching the terrible things that are people's lives and calling that entertainment. What was it? The Biggest Loser. And some ways, My 600-Pound Life. There are some prison reform shows that exist. That's the stuff. If you want to have reality TV, have that stuff. Have somebody accomplishing something, not just existing and doing BS. Because if you ever watch The Biggest Loser or My 600-Pound Life, those two shows specifically, that's real reality. Is that redundant to say that? Superfluous, maybe? But people come from situations, life comes at them how it does, they respond and react how they do, and find themselves in a certain circumstance. And these shows are about getting out of bad circumstances. That's something to watch. I don't want to watch Robin Brown. Especially when you look at Robin Brown and from the door you knew there was something wrong with this woman. I don't want to watch 21 Kids and Counting. Especially when there's just something real. I know, and I hate saying that, but we are very simplistic. We still have a good part of our population that are sheeple. And I'm pretty sure at some point in time, I was or am or whatever. I might be right now and not even realizing. But I kind of like the free thinking. I kind of like talking to someone and having them not really be on the same plane, but it starts the conversation, because that's your diversity. Your diversity has nothing to do with this stuff that's painted on you. Your diversity truly comes from, your diversity comes from your thought, your mental, because how you're painted has nothing to do with what you are, to be honest. To be honest. I can go over certain personality traits, and I bet everyone from every corner of the globe, from every race, could say, yep, I know someone like that. Welcome to Costco, I love you. We'll talk about 9/11 one day too. Because we might be in the same boat on that. Like I said, when things just don't add up, it's like when people debate and their final line is, well, you're an idiot, or you're ugly and your mother dresses you funny. That's not a conversation I want to get into. But if you want to have a conversation and disagree productively, then we can do that. Because we need to think. We really need to think. And part of thought is disagreement. Part of thought is being wrong. I cringe, and I work in IT, I cringe at AI. I think. Do some work to find the answer, because the research actually builds your knowledge base. I'm not a fan of the instant answer. I'm not a fan of, it's like that struggle. Any math nerds out there? So the quadratic equation. Do you know how to prove that? What is it? X equals y equals negative b plus minus the square root of 4ax minus something like that. But it all stems from a squared plus ax squared plus b. I have to look at it, but basically, if you put it on paper, I can prove the quadratic equation. I know how to work it. Doesn't that scare you, though, that they're using AI to build it? Because isn't that a reliance on a brain that's not yours? Which means that if it's wrong, you can't really backwards engineer it and figure it out, because you don't even know how it was built. You'll spend more time trying to figure out how it was built as opposed to just building it and knowing how it was built so you know where to tear it down. I mean, maybe I'm thinking about this a little too much. You might be speaking above my head when you say you have to develop art. Okay, I get it. Okay, yeah. Okay, yes. And when my oldest daughter was in first grade, 2006, teacher said they can use calculators. My degree's in math education. And I went to the school and I said, I'm not telling you the rules for anyone else. When 6 basic repairs of it. That's scary. That's frightening. Oh, real quick. So when, she was in, and they said you use calculators, and I went and I said, look, I don't know, I'm not making rules for everybody else, but my kid, no. I don't care if she has to take off her shoes, use her fingers and toes. She's going to learn how to do math, not how to use a machine. And the whole concept of AI being responsible for the repairs, especially from the logical level. From the physical level, that doesn't bother me as much. But from the logical level, that's downright frightening. I mean, it is kind of on that Terminator level. I don't think that's hyperbole. That's Terminator stuff. But, we'll see. We will see. I'm all about the technology when properly deployed. I liked Rain Man. I actually refer to my younger daughter as Rain Woman. She's not a woman, but yeah, Rain Woman. And yeah, she's autistic, and she's like, she makes cat noises and has this thing going on with her hands. I don't know. But she can hit all of my kids can swing a bat. All of my kids can hit. My autistic daughter is an absolute beast. The girl can just flat out rake with power. But yeah. So, but it's just about 8:50 here. I'm a little bit from the office. I'd like to thank everybody for jumping in this morning. And yeah, we'll talk a little trash about the world tomorrow. Happy Thursday. Be safe. Have a great day, everyone. Creepy finger.